every night was like Caligula's birthday party. And that's all I'm going to say. I told my wife I wouldn't embarrass myself, so I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
I grew up in Somerville,
Okay.
and I live in Charlestown now.
Okay.
First concert was the Dave Clark 5. That's how old I am. My whole family was absurd, so the rules seemed sort of normal. But we had one that in order to have breakfast on Sunday, you had to go to communion because we were very Catholic.
Okay.
Yeah. So no communion, no breakfast. Yeah, I was a bad student. I got thrown out of one school for telling a nun to fuck off because no one would tell her except me, and everyone got it, you know. But she accused us of losing a hockey game. It was a state finals, actually, because I was flunking French and God wasn't on our side. And I told her exactly what I thought and then left. My wife has a joke about me, which is every meal I have is the best meal I've ever had. And because it's mostly true. I enjoy eating. And I'm going to have duck hash, please, with 2 eggs, and that's it.
How do you want your eggs?
Over medium. And maybe a bowl of fruit. Also a huge fan of the blackened swordfish at a place called Belle Isle in Winthrop.
Okay.
Oh, it's good. It's not a fancy place. It's very basic, but the fish, and I've had fish everywhere, and I'd put this up against anybody. This is fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Want a little coffee?
Yeah, that'd be terrific. No, they're not kidding around here. I love this place. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mostly, this is so good. This breakfast is wonderful. Eggplant parm. If I smell eggplant parm anywhere, because that's what my grandmother's house smelled like all the time. It's the best. When I was in kindergarten, they actually had to send a note home to tell, because the other kids would you'd bring a snack, peanut butter and crackers. I would have a half a loaf of Italian bread with this much eggplant. And the teacher goes, that's not a snack. He's got enough food to feed the whole class. And my grandma goes, what do they know? Food's never going to hurt you. And my grandfather, who I loved, and he used to do as much cooking as my grandmother, And when I was a kid, we loved being, like, when he would mind us, my grandfather, he hated cleaning stuff. I love this story. So no matter who he was with, whatever he opened, that's what you got. So it was just him and I, and we were having like one of those boxes of ice cream. He would just cut it in half, and he'd get half and I'd get half. And the same with a pie. If it was a pie, if there were 3 of us, he cut it in 3s. If there were 4, 4. If there were 2, we each got a half a pie. And I go, because he didn't want to clean, just throw everything away. And he didn't care. Yeah. What do I love about Boston? I mean, it'd be a little bit ridiculous and trite to say everything, but I have lived many other places. I had apartments in New York. I was in LA for a time, and I've always come back to Boston because it just feels like home. You know what I mean? It's manageable to me. But yeah, I like the history of Boston. I like the familiarity. I like that I sort of feel part of it. Boston in the 90s, when it really started getting gentrified, I was sort of not aware of it. I was either working clubs late and stuff like that. But I know that's when it started to go go from what you see in a movie like The Town to what it's become now, which is extremely gentrified. You know, I got retired hedge fund people living next to me for their in-town home just to have a house in Boston. You know, so, and that's not the Boston I grew up with. You know, the Boston I grew up with was, you know, sort of gritty, and that was always its attraction. Well, I live in the shadow of the bridge. Like I live in I can see the Tobin Bridge where he landed. I mean, I walk by where he landed most every day. They actually call it Stewart's Landing. It's, you know, I mean, you shed no tears for that guy. The whole thing was a tragedy, but I don't care. I mean, he was not right from the get-go. But that whole thing consumed us. You know what I mean? That was a big turning point in the race relations around here.
100%.
Not that it's gotten any better in certain parts of the world, but you know, there have been steps, and I think that was that was really one of the seminal points of like, hey, we gotta all learn how to figure this out, or it's gonna be, it's only gonna get worse. You know, and we do have the history with busing and everything, so it's. I've always found racism fascinating. You know, that the same people who go to a Celtics game and cheer, you know, for a primarily, you know, mostly a black team, and yet go out and have racist feelings. I've never understood that. Same with baseball. You know what I mean? It's racism. You know, to me, is laziness. You don't want to deal with people, so you make a broad statement about everybody, and now you're done. You know, it really is. It's like those people are the problem.
Right.
You know, no, it's not. Even when I was a kid, never got it, never understood it. Dumpsters are my home, man. It's you know, I started this gag years ago because I enjoy smoking cigars, and no matter where you are, you know, people will find a you know, I can have people 100 feet away from me if they catch a whiff, you know, and I try not to offend. You know, I don't go blow smoke in people's faces, but I really enjoy smoking cigars. Early on, I said to myself, you know, where can I go smoke a cigar where no one will bother me? And the logical answer was a dumpster. You know, if you're going out of your way to walk to a dumpster to get offended, and then it became a thing with my friends and I that smoke cigars, that wherever we go, we try to find a dumpster.
Yeah.
But I had a friend of mine who has become very famous. We were smoking at my home dumpster at Giggles on Route 1. There was, you know, 6 or 8 of us, beach chairs, dumpster. And he goes, you know, I thought we work hard and try to make money so we don't have to do this. And I go, look, no one's making you stay here.
Yeah.
You have 2 options. You can sit down and smoke a cigar with us, or you can leave. Yeah. Those are your options, you know. And he goes, well, you know. And then I go, hey, you choose. But that's it. It's where I'm the most comfortable. You know, it's, you know, I don't like fancy. I don't like, you know, I mean, I've been in cigar bars. I've been in very swanky cigar bars. One time I got to smoke cigars at Fenway Park after I opened for Bill Burr there. And we were in the bleachers, just him and I smoking cigars. Like, you don't get to smoke in Fenway Park, you know, so dumpsters are where I live. That's, you know, when I go to a club, I'll say, like, look, if you don't see me and you need me, I'm by a dumpster. And they'll go, great, that's all I need to know. Yeah, no one can bother you at a dumpster. No one. Look, I have to say this. cigars and coffee are how I wake up, and cigars are how I go to bed. And if that doesn't happen, it doesn't feel like a complete day to me. You know. Not saying it's right for everybody, but for me it works, and you know I see no harm in it. It's really what keeps me going. You know, people say to me, you know, those cigars could kill you, and I go, you know what? But they're keeping you alive right now, because it puts me in a place where I don't even want to deal with your foolishness. You know, and that's how I really think about it. Look, I'm not going to defend cigars. If you like them, you like them, and I like them unapologetically. I seldom want to punch anybody in the throat when I'm smoking a cigar, and I can't say that for the rest of my day. You know, just on my drive over here, there were people who needed a punch in the throat. Just driving. What movie have you seen the most? This is going to be a toss-up between The Godfather and Tombstone. Take the Money and Run was one of my favorite comedies of all time, followed closely by Blazing Saddles. My favorite movie scene is from The Godfather 2, Frank Pentangeli in the courtroom scene, where he's called to testify. Yeah, they have his brother, so he knows he can't testify, or they'll, you know, some harm will come to his brother, and him weaseling out of his affidavit statement is just one of the best things I've ever seen. Just this old, you know, Michael Corleone said this, Michael Corleone said that. I said, sure, you know, it was nothing like that, Senator. I was in the olive oil business with his father, but that was years ago. You know, just watching this guy weasel out of this thing, knowing that he was signing his own death warrant, it's one of the best things I've ever seen in any movie. The Ding-O was a legendary comedy club. It's so legendary that some people claim it didn't exist. That it only existed in our minds, like Xanadu. You know, like it just popped up for us to inhabit. But it was a small Chinese restaurant in Emmons Square in Cambridge that sprung a lot of legendary comics, Boston comics. There were two main clubs, the Comedy Connection and then the Ding-Ho. The Comedy Connection was in Boston, the Ding-Ho in Cambridge. And it was just my earlier reference to Caligula's birthday party. Most of it took place there. And we can leave that there as well. The biggest lie I tell myself is that tomorrow's going to be different. That's really it. You know, every day I go to bed, I go, tomorrow, it's all going to... No, it's not. You wake up, I'm still me. And I don't mind it, but it's not going to change. Not at this stage of the game. You know what I mean? But every day I go to bed with this hope that tomorrow I'm going to write my novel. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to, you know, reinvent myself. I'm going to write a whole new act. I'm going to. I wake up. I go. I think I'll have a coffee and cigar and get on with my day. I think professionally, it's when I see a bad comedian. And I just don't have the heart to tell them to give up, you know, or, you know, if someone asks my opinion, I'll give it to them, but, you know, to have to watch a train wreck on stage and then go, good job, that's, you know, with a straight face, that's when I lie the most, because who am I to dash somebody's dreams? I'm sure I owe people apologies that I've forgotten about. I was not a good young man. You know, I know there are women in my life that I certainly owe. One in particular I've been trying to reach out to apologize, and she wants nothing to do with me, you know, 40 years later. Right. You know, and there's nothing I can do about it, you know, except a blanket apology to to a lot of people. Yeah, you can't relive your past. All you can do is go, look, whoever sees this, if I wronged you, I apologize. Well, I mean, we sort of touched on my idea of perfect happiness was a cup of coffee, a dumpster, and a cigar. I mean, I know that seems trivial, but I mean, that's, if people can only get to that place emotionally in their heads, all of us, it'd be a much better world. I don't want chaos in my life anymore. I want, I just want to relax and smoke a cigar and have no one bother me. The closer you can come to that, the better off you all are, to enjoy a sunset or the Caribbean or something like that. That's true happiness. It used to be, fame and all of that. I don't give a shit about that anymore at all. I just want to be able to do my job and, relax when I can and smoke a cigar. I'm really a one day at a time kind of a guy, And I think, self-important people who tell others how to live and, what they need to believe and who's good and who's bad and who's right and who's wrong really bothers me. Just leave it be. We're all just trying to, walk around and get to the end. That's all we're doing.